Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you I have a Marvel's Avengers video. Today's focus is going to be talking about 10 Marvel's Avengers I would actually like to see in the Marvel's Avengers video game. Now there's going to be some caveats to this and kind of some ground rules. Now more or less these are characters that I think would be cool to see in the game, see how Crystal Dynamics translates their powers and what they can do into the game, as well as I am also not going to be adding any characters to this list that had their character files found in the beta. There was some data mining of the beta. I did some of the data mining myself to confirm these different character files. Some of the character files we've seen, we already have. As you can see here, this is gameplay of Kate Bishop. She was also in the character files. So I'm not going to add those to the list. So this is kind of a co-op video. If you want to, go check that video out. It is, I'll put a link in the video description below, so you can go check it out, and hopefully you enjoy that video as well. But let's dive on in here. I'm going to start off with number 10. I would actually like to see Quicksilver added into the game. This is, his real name is Pietro Maximoff. He is one of the children of Magneto. The other one being his sister, Scarlet Witch. And basically, generally speaking, he is a speedster. He's nothing, I would say, incredibly special. Although, I guess being a speedster is incredibly special, ain't it? I guess that's kind of an understatement, huh? But I would honestly like to see how they translate him. He can do things such as, if he runs in circles really fast, he can actually create a vortex or almost like a tornado. As well as if he moves his arms in a circular fashion really fast, he can also create vortexes that way. He can also run up walls and run across water. And personally, while I think it might be a little tougher to translate him into Marvel's Avengers, I would be very curious to see how they would make him work, just because of the mechanics of being a speedster, being able to run up walls, etc. Let's move on to the next character, folks. And the next character I would like to see is Spider-Woman, aka Jessica Drew. This is the, I believe she is the current Earth 616 version of Spider-Woman. Understand there's multiple versions of Spider-Woman out there, and there's been quite a few changes made over the years to Spider-Woman. And essentially Spider-Woman has, well, she's super strong. She can actually glide with her suit. She can actually create pheromones, which could be possibly used as like a defense buff or something like that for the group as a support ability. She can also spray venom, acidic venom, from her hands. So there's essentially a dot or damage over time type of attack she could have. And I would just be interested to see her added into the game, as actually she's been on multiple incarnations of Avengers team, and you know, as well as other teams as well. The next character I would like to see is Havoc. This is the brother of Scott Summers. This is Alex Summers. Mostly I would say he's probably more notorious for being part of X-Force or X-Men more than Avengers, but he was one of the Avengers, and what he can do is he can absorb different types of energy and actually create plasma energy beams fired out of his hands. So he's definitely got a ranged attack there. I wouldn't say he's necessarily an expert at hand-to-hand combat, but he's definitely competent at hand-to-hand combat. And I just generally think he would actually be a cool character to see, especially since he's not featured very often in video games. Honestly, I'm trying to think of a video game he has been featured in. I think he might have been in X-Men Legends 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks. And as well as he was portrayed in X-Men First Class. However, the portrayal wasn't superbly done. I would have liked to have seen more of Havoc on the silver screen. He's always a character I've been interested in ever since I was a kid. The next character is Wonder Man. And this character is actually very interesting because he actually does have ties to AIM as well as the Avengers. So he was a big business tycoon, tech tycoon, just like Tony Stark. However, he was kind of in the struggling side of things, and Tony Stark would end up actually buying his business. This is when he was still just almost said Simon Tam. Think about comic books here, not Firefly. Simon Williams. And what would end up happening is he would actually turn to AIM, and AIM would actually do an experiment on him that would turn his body into ionic energy. So it'd be interesting to actually see him added into the game as maybe a one-off villain that somehow after the battle or various storylining, he would actually end up joining the Avengers. I essentially would more or less do his origin story in game, and just to see how it turns out. And he could do multiple things, including turning his body into ionic energy, using the ionic energy for different types of melee attacks, such as punching. He can fly at super speeds. He can heal really fast, and he can shoot energy beams out of his hands, as well as I do believe his eyes. So he definitely would have many different types of combat capabilities, and honestly, he's probably the most universal character on the list, and probably actually one of the tougher characters. But let's continue on with the list here. The next character I would like to see is Ares. Yes, Ares. That's his name. That's his real identity. This is supposed to be Ares, the god of war. And he's actually really interesting because he uses a combination of actual melee weapons as well as using actual, per se, guns or energy rifles. So obviously, maybe as a special attack, he may, or as a ranged attack, he might use pistols. And as a special attack, maybe he'll pull out like a M16 with a grenade launcher and let loose with the grenade launcher, doing all kinds of damage. As well as I said, he uses melee type weapons, such as swords and axes. So I think that would actually translate really well. Because actually, I feel, believe it or not, now I don't have a whole ton of experience here with Kate Bishop, but I actually believe the way they implemented her sword combos as well as using the bow was implemented really well. And I think they could actually do a phenomenal job with a character like Ares. Let's move on to the next character. And this is Valkyrie. Now, I'll probably pronounce her name wrong. I think I pretty much always do. I think it's Bernhard. I think I'm pronouncing it wrong. But she actually is an Asgardian. So it'd be nice to see another Asgardian in the game. Maybe some kind of Asgardian storylining where she gets added in as part of the team to assist the Avengers. And then after the storylining's done, she would end up joining the Avengers as part of the team. She is skilled at hand-to-hand combat. She cannot fly, but she does have a Pegasus that she can use to fly. Or a winged steed, if you will. She is skilled with using swords, I believe also using bows, as well as using a spear. So ranged combat capabilities, she might throw spears, and maybe even use a spear as part of her special, maybe some kind of overdrive or something, kind of like Black Widow's staff attack, but instead use a spear. And then, of course, she has her sword, which would probably be her primary, per se, when she implements heavy attacks or something like that, she would use the sword. The next character is Storm, also known as Aurora Monroe. I'm sure probably most of you know her. She was actually, for a short term, married to Black Panther, I think, for a short term. Maybe she still is. A little confused on that. I don't really follow the more modern comic books like I follow the older stuff. But she's primarily known for being an X-Man. She's also been on X Factor as well. And her powers is weather manipulation. She can actually create air currents to fly. That's how she flies, folks. Flies without wings. She can also create, thunderstorms, windstorms, ice storms. She can do all kinds of different stuff with her storm powers. Hence the name Storm, I guess. But I always thought she was a really cool character, and I always liked her as one of the X-Men. I always felt she was actually one of the more powerful X-Men that kind of really never got the attention she deserved. Although, I mean, she's definitely over the years has gained more and more popularity, including getting her own solo series. But she's always been in the shadows of two other X-Men, which I feel one is Cyclops, and another one's a later character on this list. Spoiler alert. The next character I would like to see in Marvel's Avengers is Daredevil. Matt Murdock, a.k.a. the man with no fear, the lawyer from Hell's Kitchen. He was actually an Avenger for a little while himself. And he's got different kinds of powers. Actually, he would be really interesting to see if they actually come up with some kind of sonic, per se, sonic vision, give him a different vision so it's not like looking like this, like it's actually like trying to look through the eyes of Daredevil. That would be really cool. I kind of doubt they would go that far if they would so happen to add Daredevil to the game. But he uses batons, as well as the one baton he has can actually be used as a grappling hook. Actually, I believe both of them can. He's also pretty good at throwing his baton around. If you watched the Netflix Daredevil series, he did a really good job of being able to throw his baton and bounce it off multiple surfaces and attacking multiple enemies with it. Was a shame because the Netflix Daredevil series was really good. And that would also allow them to implement other villains such as Bullseye. So it could be really interesting to see Matt Murdock out in a game, especially because that may be how they would use his blind sense. And he's actually been in various games over the years, but he was an Avenger for a little while. The next one I would like to see, we're winding down here on the top 10 list, folks. The next one is Deadpool. Now this was tough because it was like the number 1 and number 2 spots were really tough to decide, and Deadpool ended up going number 2 here. Deadpool actually for a very short period of time was an Avenger. Most of you people probably didn't know that, but definitely go take a look at that. It was really interesting how he ended up being an Avenger. Everybody knows Wade Wilson as the Merc with the Mouth. He's an expert in different types of combat. Hand-to-hand combat, uses katanas quite a bit, as well as he uses handguns, assault rifles, machine guns, grenades, bombs, everything else under the sun, as well as he has a teleportation belt. So, believe it or not, with the way Kate Bishop set up, some of his teleportation abilities is kind of already in the game, if they would want to so happen to add them. As well as he does have a healing factor, so it could be interesting to see how they work the healing factor in. Because I would like maybe as a special ability, he would heal, or it's not as a support ability, he would heal himself over time for maybe 30 seconds or a minute or whatever. But then he's also got the teleportation belt, which can add different types of effects and everything else. And you know what? I think it could be interesting to see him wisecrack a bit. It's unfortunate, though, because Nolan North is the voice actor for Tony Stark for Marvel's Avengers. And for those of you who didn't know, there was a Marvel animated movie called Hulk Versus. And one of them was Hulk versus Wolverine, which featured Deadpool, and if I recall correctly, that was Nolan North, as well as, if I recall, the 2015 Deadpool video game. If you haven't played it, check it out. It's actually not a bad game for you Deadpool fans. That was also Nolan North as well. So it would be interesting to see. Unfortunately, the voice actor that typically does Deadpool for the Marvel stuff really isn't available. Now the next one. We're not going to number 1 yet, folks, because I would like to do an honorable mention. Yes, folks, Frank Castle, a.k.a. The Punisher, was actually an Avenger. The only reason he's an honorable mention and doesn't make the list here today is because, I'm going to be honest, folks, instead of actually having him put into Marvel as Avengers, I would rather see a really good solo game done with The Punisher again. There was the Punisher video game, I think it was 2004, 2005, that was done for the PlayStation. And in my opinion, the game was great. It was definitely a very good fan service to the Punisher fans out there. It's kind of reached like kind of a cult classic type of deal because it was one of those games that it didn't really sell a ton of copies out there, but the people who played it loved it. Still talk about this game today as well. I'm talking about it here. And when I think about the Punisher, it's not just all the comic books and graphic novels I have. I also think about the video game. You know, he hasn't translated the best to the movie screen. Now, Netflix Punisher with John Bethel, that was really good. A really good translation to the screen. But when it comes to video games, even he hasn't had the best transitions. As there was, if I recall, there was a Punisher game for Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo that was kind of, you know, it was just a beat 'em up game. And then there was like a rail shooter that was done for the old Nintendo. And then honestly, the Punisher to me really wouldn't get good fan service when it comes to the video game medium until the 2004-2005 Punisher game. And it would just be nice to see another Punisher game done and with that kind of fan service, that kind of attention to detail, etc. But that's enough about our honorable mention, Frank Castle. And number one, folks, and I'm sure some of you folks probably already knew this. You've probably already seen this coming, but yeah, come on, it's Wolverine. It's my favorite character. It's the character that got me into comic books. Mr. Badass himself, you know. He's also known as James Howlett, a.k.a. Logan. You know, he's been around for a long time. He's honestly probably one of the more popular, if not one of the most popular characters in comic books. Outside of, I would say, probably Superman and Batman and maybe Captain America and Spider-Man. I mean, he is a quite popular character. He is probably his longest stint has been with the X-Men, but he has also been with teams like Alpha Flight, and he has been on different incarnations of the X-Men, as well as, I believe, both X-Factor and X-Force. And honestly, if I was to create him, he would kind of be a shitty character at ranged combat, but my God, would he be a god in melee. And he's actually one of the very few that is definitely skilled enough to defeat even Captain America in a hand-to-hand combat fight. Captain America even tried to break his wrist so Wolverine couldn't use his claws, and Wolverine still won the fight. So, you know, Wolverine, he's good at one thing, and that one thing ain't nice. But anyway, folks, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Did any characters that you would like to see make this video, or is there characters that didn't make this video that you would like to see? Go ahead, comment down below. I'm very curious of what people actually say. You know, I'm a big comic book nerd, so, you know, I'm kind of curious about what other person's opinion is about the various different comic book characters. And when it comes to the Avengers, my God, there's so many characters you could draw from. I mean, a 10 list really, in my opinion, isn't enough, but I also don't want to make a hour-long video. Either way, folks, thanks again for tuning in, and have yourself a great day.